Good evening, everyone. I am Lisha Dore, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to One on One, where we bring to you some of the best minds in Trinidad and Tobago. Let me start by wishing all of you and your families a bright and prosperous new year. It's certainly a pleasure to have all of you here with us for the first episode of season 4. So, believe it or not, we're on to season 4, 4 years of running this podcast. And what a year this has been so far. On Saturday, January the 3rd, the world was rocked by the capture of then Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And I just want to do a very brief timeline of how the events unfolded. I'm sure you guys would have been paying attention. I mean, it's generating so much discussion in the public space. It's picking up all of the headlines on television, newspapers, social media, and so on. But just for some of you who might have still been caught up celebrating the new year, let me just do a very, very quick timeline of what would have been taking place. On Saturday, January the 3rd, as I said, Maduro was captured during a surprise US-led operation in Caracas, and I believe all of us were surprised by that. He was removed from Venezuela on the very same day, and he was placed into US custody. On January the 4th, 2026, that would have been Sunday, so just a few days ago, Maduro was flown to the US under heavy security. The US officials, they would have described the operation as a law enforcement action. Of course, Maduro and his allies, they would have rejected this, calling it illegal. Maduro still claims that he is Venezuela's legitimate president. On the 5th of January, that's just yesterday, Maduro would have appeared in a US federal court, and he pleaded not guilty to charges, which included charges of drug trafficking, narco-terrorism, and weapons offenses. In Venezuela, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as the interim president. Political stability in Venezuela remains fragile. There are security forces deployed there to manage protests and unrest, and there is some political uncertainty. Now, whereas the international reaction to these events is concerned, I mean, they were mixed. Some governments strongly supported the move. Others raised serious concerns about sovereignty and international law. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, and this is where our concern is, this program is really going to be based on what Maduro's capture means for Trinidad and Tobago. But in Trinidad and Tobago, Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, she moved very, very quickly to clarify Trinidad and Tobago's position. She did, in fact, put out public responses, I believe, on both the 3rd and the 4th of January. So she was very quick in coming to a response, right? What she would have made very, very clear is that Trinidad and Tobago played no role in any military operation against Venezuela, stressing that the country remains committed to peaceful relations with the Venezuelan people. And this has been her stance throughout this entire impasse between Venezuela and the US, right? Trinidad and Tobago remains committed to peaceful relations with the Venezuelan people. At the same time, Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar would have reassured the citizens at home. Now, guys, I am basically pulling my material from what is out there in the public space. It is on her page, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, as well as the United National Congress's social media pages, and widely reported in the national media. So she, at the same time, right, when she stressed that our country, Trinidad and Tobago, remains committed to peaceful relations with the Venezuelan people. She plainly stated there is no crisis in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, I don't want to comment. I mean, I would prefer Candace to comment, but, come on, ladies and gentlemen, come on. We just came out of Christmas into the new year. Now we enter carnival season. party all over the place. And for those who are pushing this message that somehow there's some kind of security crisis in Trinidad, Trinidad has actually never been safer than it is now. And this is one of the outcomes of this incident that would have taken place between Venezuela and the US, right? Now, looking ahead, the Prime Minister also signaled that the developments in Venezuela could open the door to stronger diplomatic relations that we had before. So in short, her message was one of calm, clarity, and reassurance. Trinidad and Tobago is not involved. That is something I have been maintaining on my social media as well. Trinidad and Tobago is not involved. Our country remains safe, and the focus is on peace and stability in the region, right? So that's just a little background and a little intro into our topic of discussion today. And we are very pleased to have veteran journalist, Mr. Ken Ali, with us to discuss what Maduro's capture means for us in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, I specifically would have titled our podcast with that, what Maduro's capture means for us in Trinidad and Tobago, because Ken would have put out an article with that title discussing that particular material, right? So we are extremely pleased to have Ken with us. He was with us maybe a little about 2.5 months ago. It feels long, but hopefully Ken will join us on a more regular basis as well. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our viewers who are joining us on Zoom and social media. We are live, ladies and gentlemen, on Facebook as well as YouTube, and we are on Zoom. For those of you who would like to make a contribution, raise a question, a matter of concern, personally, come on to the Zoom. We welcome everyone. So, as I said, we're thrilled. We're absolutely thrilled to have all of you all here today, members of the media as well. As always, we aim to make the session as interactive as possible. So, we encourage you to participate. Raise your hand if you want to make a contribution. Feel free to share your comments and questions on the chat. I know this is going to be a very, very interesting discussion because of the topic. Without further ado, I would like to now pass the mic over to my co-moderator, Donnie, who will give his opening remarks and kick off our discussion. Donnie, over to you.
So, good night, everyone. Happy New Year. And I agree with what you've said, Alicia. Last year was a very interesting year. And we have said, we've just previously said that not just with local politics, but in regards to geopolitical issues. Last year would have been really the build up to what occurred on the 3rd of September, or on the 3rd of January. And I remember, when I saw it on social media, I believe the Prime Minister was one of the first persons to actually put out a release on this issue. And she made it very clear that this has really nothing to do with us. I believe the commitment to Venezuelans, specifically the migrants, have been reaffirmed by the government's position where they are looking at, the re-registration. So, there's no question in my mind, our commitment to our neighbor. And I think that has been abundantly clear in messages, in press releases, and by our actions. Now, we have received numerous news feeds. If you put on your TV, every single station on cable is drilling down into this issue in Venezuela. Only today we would have received on local news feedback from two former ministers of energy under the partnership government, Ms. Beecham and Mr. Ramner, right, on their position as to what it means to Trinidad from the energy perspective. I guess, Ken, our veteran resident journalist, will expand on many issues. So I look forward to a very spirited discussion and to getting this perspective from you, Ken. I know you are well researched in this issue. You've spoken about it already. And, we look forward to what you have to say. So, Ken, without further ado, over to you.
So thank you, Danny. Thank you very much for having me, and good evening to you, your many viewers and participants. I tell you, of the interviews I do with the media, the one that I get most response from is when you all kindly invite me to participate. So
Oh,
I'm really
nice.
honored. Yeah, I'm really honored when I'm asked. Thank you for having me. I want to say at the start, I see I've missed some media coverage in the last few hours. You said Mr. Ramnarine spoke. I would really like to hear what he said. So I'd look for it on social media and the other former energy minister, because energy is at the key of what Trinidad and Tobago could benefit, maybe in the short, but certainly in the medium term, as a result of the new administration in Venezuela. So I would want to hear what Mr. Ramnarine, for whom I have great respect.
I will try and see if I can get on to Kevin and ask him to join us because he
Oh,
also
that
comes on his program regularly. So
great,
I will see if I
great.
can reach out to him.
So, okay, so let me give a backdrop. First, that article spoke about areas in which Trinidad and Tobago could benefit, of course, with different timelines. The energy is one. Possibly, I'll just give the headlines now, and we could drill down on it in a little while. The OFAC license, with respect to the cross-border Demanity project and reviving the Dragon Gas project. So that is very much in the time in the pipeline. Well, quite literally.
Mhm.
And that is something we could expect in the foreseeable future, in my view. And in fact, not just in my view, my own reading of it, the New York Times alluded to that, and other media houses, I think the BBC and so on. But I just want to widen it out for a little while, and then we could get onto specific topics. So that's one. There are trade. Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela had a healthier trade relations years ago, before Venezuela had problems with their currency and the inability to pay. So we could have reawakened that. They were trading minerals and chemicals and food stuff and so on. But when the bottom fell out of the barrel of the Venezuelan economy, of course, Venezuela was unable to pay, and that trade fell apart badly. There are, well, let me, before I get to immigration, let me talk about aviation. Carl is owed about $50 million, $50 million by Venezuela, until Carl pulled out of the Venezuela route because Venezuela was not able to pay. The Bolivar was heavily devalued, and they were unable to remit. So first, Carl cut down its operations from Caracas and elsewhere, and in recent times stopped flying to and from. And as you know, there are a fair number of people travel between Trinidad and Tobago and Caracas, some for leisure, but many for work in the oil industry and to some extent in farming and so on. So that we hope maybe sometime in the future, Cal, which of course has endured 10 years of financial losses, could access that fund. So that has benefits for Trinidad and Tobago economy. But a key aspect of all of this is the implications for immigration. Now, a quarter of Venezuela's population migrated over 10 years of the tenure of Maduro was 12 years. And in recent of those years, as many as 10 years, the destruction of the economy, the repression of the people, the fact that health sector and education and so on, security and all that fell apart. A lot of people migrated. Most went to the largest single number, went to Colombia, some went to Brazil, Peru, Guyana, and several crossed the rough waters to Trinidad and Tobago. We must always remember that at its nearest point, between Guria and the Gulf of Paria here, is 7 miles. And on go-fast boats, they could do that in 12 minutes. Well, that's what the drug runners do. But the pirogue trade is between Pedernales and Tucupita and so on, heading into Caracas and Erin and Palo Seco and so on. And they bring a lot of illegal. There was a time when you would see Venezuelans only in the southern districts. Now, you go any part of Trinidad and Tobago, and you see a lot of Venezuelans who have settled in neatly and nicely many of them illegals, many in the informal sector doing stuff in hospitality, the women in bars and restaurants and so on. A lot of the men doing menial works and so on. There's a Trinidadians who want to do, but they're not being paid NIS and all of that. But they're coming in, and let's put the figure at 100,000, maybe it's more than that, put pressure on housing in Trinidad and Tobago, on the social services of Trinidad and Tobago, meaning hospital, healthcare, meaning education, and all of that. The central bank had put a figure. I can't remember the figure, but it's a sizable figure that the Venezuelan immigration has cost Trinidad and Tobago, a significant figure over many years by us having to provide all those many services to them. Because, like I said, they got healthcare, they got housing, they had to live somewhere, and so on. They subsidized in many forms. If one expects that Venezuelans will begin to return to Venezuela, which will not be immediate, but one expects that they will begin to return. That will ease up quite a lot in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, I've been following the media in international media, Al Jazeera, BBC, CNN, and so just like you all have been. And when they interview people, like this morning on, was it Al Jazeera? I was seeing they were interviewing people at the Venezuelan-Colombian border. And you have a number of Venezuelans there in Colombia who saying we are waiting for our homeland to become stable so we could go back. Remember, in many cases, they
That's
left the
very
families.
joyful.
Yeah, they left the families and their
Yeah.
loved ones and so on. And so if one could anticipate, and we're in the realm of speculation, but it is fair to guess that having left the families behind, in many cases, some, not all, would want to return. So one could expect that a benefit to Trinidad and Tobago with employment, healthcare, education, other social services, housing, and so on. That is a benefit for the Trinidad and Tobago economy. It's a major benefit. So I think I've covered the major headlines. One, the energy sector, which of course would be the major area. I was hearing today from knowledgeable people that there could be a U.S. interest now that there's stability one expects there'll be stability in Venezuela. There may be a U.S. interest in helping Trinidad and Tobago with the restart of the refinery. That's a frontline project of the Honorable Prime Minister. And one could possibly anticipate PDVSA, which is, of course, the Venezuelan energy giant, has enormous resources. We must always remember that Venezuela has the largest crude oil reserves in the entire world. If Chevron cranks up, ExxonMobil, and so on, Shell and others, and the projects begin to come on stream, there are immeasurable benefits for Trinidad and Tobago. And increase natural gas exploits mean we could crank up Point Lisas again, implications for natural gas, for LNG and all of those things. So speaking broadly and in layman's terms, I think there are tremendous benefits for the country moving forward. Now, the administration is currently under the watch of Delcy Rodriguez. Many people ask, why not Ms. Machado, who, of course, was the opposition leader and whose proxy candidate, surrogate candidate, Mr. Gonzalez, won the election, and of course Maduro stole it and remained in the presidential palace. One theory that I've read in newspapers abroad is that Delcy Rodriguez knows the energy sector. She was a former oil minister and as vice president and so on. And that may be a factor that led President Trump to keep her in the position or have her installed as president. I think the U.S. is strategic in what it is doing there. I don't expect that this will be the final formation of the Venezuelan administration, because one guesses that the military would have divided loyalties and the cabinet may not be altogether supportive or not supportive at all of the U.S. But one expects that there would be a period of settling down, however long that would take to become stable, we will look at what happens there. But just to sum up this point for now, to indicate that once stability returns to Venezuela, or relative stability, there are major implications for Trinidad and Tobago. There are also the issue of security. Trinidad and Tobago has 123 porous borders, as the correct figure, 123. It's unprotected, or coastline is unprotected. You know, the fact that these maritime attacks on these drug runners in recent months had a profound impact on drug trafficking. We know that. And in doing so, it was a major, the media is not reporting that, and maybe you could ask why. It was a major blow to the underworld economy, which is a huge in value. My research finds that, and my research led me to like the IADB, the Inter-American Development Bank, which says it could be up to $60 billion a year. A lot of that is drug money laundering, and of course, other things, the weapons trade and so on. So that is another implication. There's huge money laundering in this country and a massive underworld economy. So, colleagues, these are some areas in which the economy of Trinidad and Tobago could be impacted in the near to medium term.
Well, Ken, I think that was very comprehensive, and I'll just like to put a couple points on top of that. It was in this lifetime, not so far away, that Venezuela was one of the richest countries in the hemisphere. Back in the days, the place to shop was Caracas. The standard of living that the citizens had there was above average, I would say above average. The commerce that used to occur in Caracas and Venezuela was, I mean, to put it in layman's terms, as we say, you know, it was very, very substantial when compared to other countries. I see, once things settle down, because I do believe that it's in the embryonic stage, because I know President Trump would have given certain ultimatums to this new or interim, I'm not too sure which one to use, administration in Venezuela. And he has cited certain areas of concern that they are looking at, in which, you know, there could be U.S. investments and collaborations and stuff like that. I think for Trinidad, aside from energy, which is the most substantial part, and I'll go to my forte. Agriculture will be one of the sectors that could also benefit highly substantially, owing to the breeds of animals that they have in Venezuela. Remember, they would share cross-border genetic lines in animals from places like Argentina and Brazil. And what we have seen there, you know, historically, is that in agriculture they were very advanced, and they still have those genetic lines, and that ability to produce, also take into consideration their landmass. So I think from the agricultural perspective as well, Trinidad and obviously the wider region could benefit once things stabilize and there is a firm understanding and there's, you know, open trade and open collaborations with Venezuela. That could also be a game changer because it will increase food security for Trinidad and the region, in which traditionally the region, according to the UNDP, has been described as very vulnerable and to an extent food insecure. I mean, Trinidad, by extension, if we look at it, we are highly food insecure, being a net importer of food. So I see from the food production and the agricultural side and the food security aspect, I see a lot of changes occurring over time once things can be settled in Venezuela.
Yeah. You know, there was a time, and you're correct here with the agriculture thing. There was a time a lot of our nationals traveled to, especially Guria. Guria is a large state. It is northeastern, I think. there's a lot of arable lands and available
Yes.
lands.
Mhm.
A lot of our people went there to take part in farming, and there was a healthy exchange of labor and products and so on. They would bring their farm cultivated crops to annex some of it on pirogues, and they would sell in the markets and so on. In fact, that was and then of course in some cases they had families and so on. And that is how to an extended term. There's one area, the other means which this term came up, the cocoa pile. A lot of them came out of that. And that closeness, I mean, was very close. For many years, there was efficient. There wasn't the Venezuelan police. I'm trying to remember how they're called. They never made these arrests and so on. So these guys go with their 2 engines on the pirogues and the fish in the deep
Guardia
waters.
Nacional.
Right, that's it, the Guardia Nacional.
Yes.
That's right. And so on. And they spend time there, they shop there, and so on. They visit family, and they would do this thing back and forth all the time. And that went for many, many years. It is part of the culture of the country that many people don't know, because it's so far, it's so remote. But that existed literally for many, many years. So
Well,
yes, farming offers prospects there.
I could say that I know in Trinidad, we have some very large farmers who do have interest in Venezuela, but who have not monetized them when, over the last few years, when things really started to get volatile there. So, for Trinidad now to benefit from agriculture, it's not as difficult as we think. Because, as I said, we have some very large farmers here who have holdings and who have interest in Venezuela. And it will be very easy to go into production there, which could supplement what we need here as well.
Yeah.
So it may not be as far-fetched as, someone may think.
And indeed, what is required really is stability,
Yes.
and an assurance of that. And one of the things that took place over the last few years was the fact that Venezuelan gangsters came through. What is Tren de Aragua? Now, Tren de Aragua is a gang started in Venezuelan prison, and that was allowed to develop. And that, if you read the indictment against Maduro and his wife, the Americans are suggesting that they were linked to the criminals, those criminals, the gangsters. No, whether they were linked or not, the Trinidad link to that is that they came through the borders, and in many cases, they traded in weapons, they brought contraband goods, they brought illegal immigrants, and they came and they committed crimes here with Trinidad and Tobago criminals. Now, that is indicated in several reports, one going back to the year 2020, when CARICOM employed a Canadian research company to do research, and they found that Tren de Aragua had a presence in Trinidad. The Trinidad government at that time in 2020 did nothing about it. It is very interesting. It is very interesting that we were allowed to have all these open borders at a time when the Americans in particular were telling us that drug trafficking through Trinidad and Tobago, 20% of the world's cocaine, according to reputable, credible reports, are shipped through Venezuela. Of that, most comes through Trinidad and Tobago. Most. We are 7 miles away. Some go to the Pacific, but not usually through Trinidad. They will go through the Caribbean archipelago and go through the Dominican Republic and so on, and go to Mexico, Panama, and all that. But a lot is very close here. They come to Trinidad, some settle in the local market, but not much. And then they go on these yachts, many of which are based in Chagaramas. No, we're not telling tales out of school. These things are documented, and you have to ask why no action was ever taken. Now, the U.S. deployed 5 agencies to work in Trinidad and Tobago a couple of years ago when they started to crack down on this. They included the DEA, the FBI, Southcom, which is based in Florida, and other agencies. And it is then that there were some crackdowns. You remember several boats over a period of time being held off Chagaramas. There was one in recent months that was traced all the way to off the waters of Portugal. They were heading to Europe. Most of the cocaine ends up in northwestern Europe in two ports. One is called Antwerp, and the other is called Rotterdam. The market in Europe is 40 times richer than in the eastern seaboard of the U.S. For what I'm told is the pure cocaine. All right. So the market there is richer. So no pirogue is heading from Trinidad to there. It is a well-organized, it's a cartel. It is a massive cartel. And that is why when the U.S. writes the report in the indictment about Caribbean politicians, I mean, we don't know and we can't call names, but people could deduce what they want to deduce out of all of these things. There have never been arrests, and it is a verifiable fact that the drug trafficking takes place through Trinidad and Tobago and the other islands to some extent. And I've said it in many reports. You see that the U.S. State Department has said it repeatedly. I'll give you one more fact. Last year, January, while Dr. Rowley was Prime Minister, the U.S. Secretary of State then, his name was Anthony Blinken, invited Dr. Rowley and his team, Amy Brown and others, and they went to see him in Washington at the State Department. He told them the facts of what they've found. They have intelligence gathering, they have reconnaissance. The U.S. have enormous resources. When you listen, for example, I just go off on a little tangent here, of the intelligence work and the surveillance work they did before the crackdown on Maduro, it was incredible, you know. They were saying they knew everything of his movements, when he was playing with his dog, where he went, what he ate, everything. All right? Because the Americans have enormous resources, and they deploy that resources also in trying to deal with the drug situation. Trinidad and Tobago, only because of our geography, where we are and how vulnerable we are, is why we are pawn in all of this, and there's been no action. So anybody who's been following this would know that is not a big surprise that the Americans would indicate, as they did, about the drug trafficking and politicians and so on. And again, we call no names. But I know this discussion is primarily to talk about the economic benefits, what it means generally for Trinidad and Tobago. And my take is based on these things: aviation, trade, immigration, and certainly, last but certainly not least at all, the energy sector. I could see the role of the Americans with the refinery. The Prime Minister is determined to reopen the refinery, one expects in a year or two. That will have profound economic benefits for Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, the OFAC license, once things settle down, clearly, because the Venezuelan authorities, the Venezuelan government, will be a government supportive of the U.S. because President Trump has made that very clear. He's essentially saying that Delcy Rodriguez has to toe the line or we'll take action. He said the action could be stronger action than we took against Maduro. So she understands. If you notice in the last few hours, she has changed the talk. At first, she said that Maduro is still president, and so now she said, no, we'll work with President Trump. So she understands the lay of the land. She understands what the circumstances are. So I think it's a settling period is required. One expects a settling period. The American energy companies have also said, we want stability before we invest, because all investment by Chevron, in particular, ExxonMobil and the others, in the tune of billions of dollars. So they want to know they could get their money out, that the Bolivar would be stable, that would be stability at the oil installations, all of those things. Companies invest on the basis of all of those things. So I think one could expect the Trump administration in quick order to put things in place to ensure stability in Venezuela.
Folks, so we have heard some commentary from Ken Ali talking about the potential benefits of the removal of Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela. We could, already, I'm not waiting to see a decrease in crime. I think we have already gotten a decrease in crime, right? We've seen the murder rates gone down. We have seen human trafficking gone down, and illegal firearms, that trade has gone down. So we have already seen the benefits, right? Now, Ken would have commented on many other potential benefits in the energy sector, the increase in trade, the possibility of Caribbean Airlines returning to Venezuela. Donnie would have spoken about agriculture, potential benefits in agriculture. But we want to hear from some of you as well. You know, what are your thoughts? What does Maduro's capture mean to you and potentially for Trinidad and Tobago? So please weigh in the discussion. Those of you who are online with us on Zoom, if you want to make a comment, ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. Please use the chats and so on. I am seeing someone saying that it's a wait and see before making positive speculation. That is one of the comments I have gotten. I haven't really checked through the chats as yet, but I know people are commenting, so at some point I'll have a look. Now, Ken, I know you also made some comments about something that is sort of a bit, well, what should I say? What's the word I want to use? I can't find the word right now, right? But this has to do with the United States declaring that there are politicians in the Caribbean who were corrupted by cocaine traffickers, right? And what are your thoughts on that? Is there anything yourself or Donnie would like to share about that?
Yeah, well, I spoke a bit, and I think one of the words you're looking for, the statements I made are controversial statements, because they really were controversial statements. But no, they're really not controversial. Controversial in that the established media is not taking it up. Most commentators are not taking it up. And again, that's a commentary on this is further controversial statement. As a commentary, the fact that they have not taken up those issues is a commentary on the media, ownership of the media. All right. And this is a point I keep making about who owns the media and what is the prevailing discussion in urban elite societies. And this is one of the reasons. And in another discussion, we could have a discussion on why the media, the traditional media is losing its footing. Because this is a discussion you all have in here this evening. It's not one you'll put on TV6 or CNC3 and C. And this is a critical issue because this is not speculation. The US have said that. We're going on successive reports that the US has issued. The U.S. State Department and various other agencies, the DA has said, the FBI and several agencies. Some months ago, the U.S. authorities assigned several agencies to work with the Trinidad and Tobago authorities. They came here. There's an organization called Southcom, which is based in Florida, and is a multi-sectoral a law enforcement and military organization. Came and they engage in training of all law enforcement officers and so on. All of that to develop the skills, the resources, the technical resources to reconnaissance, surveillance, and all that to trap the drug traffickers. You know, the U.S. Embassy is now setting up a massive headquarters on Sham Elysees, where the country club used to be. Massive area. And they're moving from Marley Street. One of the reasons they're doing that is to house all these agencies. They have several agencies that are operating in Trinidad. They see Trinidad and Tobago. They understand the strategic value and the the geopolitical aspect of the Trinidad and Tobago being strategically located in the cocaine transshipment route. So while it may sound controversial, it really isn't. It is really the facts that the U.S. authorities have laid out. But it is not a matter you would see the newspapers writing an editorial on. You'll never see an investigation into that. The police service, certainly in past years, never put emphasis on that. You never saw arrests. We hardly saw any interdiction on drug traffic, on money laundering. And you have to ask why. In a country with such a huge underground economy, why haven't there been arrests? Why haven't there been crackdowns on the underground economy, which, according, I said earlier, the IIDB said it's worth $60 billion TT a year. a huge underground economy, and there'll be no exposure of that in a real way in the media, and no, certainly the 10 years of the PNM administration, they made no effort to deal with that, as I identified a while ago. Yeah. So guys, those are my major thoughts on that, the economy. I don't know what Minister Ramnarine said. I really would be interested in hearing what him and the other experts, but I've spoken to economists on this one until late this evening, who also, like me, feels there are benefits and immeasurable benefits for the Trinidad economy. But again, we have to wait and see how quickly Venezuela could settle down and be stabilized. The U.S. president has said, when they asked him if he was going to put boots on the ground, I think he was not definitive in what he's going to do. If it stays, or if it is unstable, one could expect that the Americans will put boots on the ground. But Trinidad and Tobago, I could see stability in Venezuela leading to economic and national security benefits for Trinidad. Because as Isha was talking about the reduction in homicides, and it has been known for a long, long time that most of the homicides in Trinidad and Tobago are linked to the drug trade, the gang wars. The gang wars are tied into drug turfs, and of course they're tied into the drug trade. So all of that, the fact that the U.S. has, to an extent, managed to seal our borders in recent times through the maritime attacks on drug trafficking, means that the borders have gotten safer, and a lot of the drug traffickers and the gangsters are not as operative as they were.
No, Ken, I just want to, I know a lot of it you would have mentioned in speaking, right? But just for the purpose of the audience, though, I want to read a couple lines from a few of the posts that you would have put out, because I wanted to cement certain facts that you would have mentioned, right? You said that various US and UN reports reveal that about 24% of the world's cocaine, and that would be roughly 650 tons a year, is shipped through Venezuela, of which at least 20% is trafficked via Trinidad and Tobago, right? So folks, I mean, that to me is alarming. You know, the fact that 20% is shipped through Trinidad and Tobago, right? He even went on to talk about a cargo route is via Wiria, to the Gulf of Paria, right? And we know we have a porous borders. How many points of entry were there? I mean, was it somewhere between 100 and
123.
Yeah,
right.
123.
For us, the points of entry then, right, that were unmanned in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, why do you think the past government, I mean, they did not seek to secure these borders? I mean, this is not something new, huh? This is something that has been there for decades, you know, the borders being wide open, right?
Indeed.
That has led to the influx of drugs. It has led to human trafficking. All these missing people in Trinidad and Tobago, ladies and gentlemen, hundreds of people go missing a year. Where are they? Where are they? People don't just disappear, you know? So, I mean, that tells you people are being trafficked in and out of the country. The illegal firearms, oh God, we know, right? Most of the murders in Trinidad and Tobago are being done by illegal firearms. So, I mean, this problem, my question is why? Why was there no effort, no concerted effort to really secure the borders of Trinidad and Tobago, knowing we had these problems with illegal drug trafficking, human trafficking, illegal firearms? All of that leading to the violence that we see in Trinidad and Tobago and the destruction of our country.
Mhm.
And that has been going on for decades, decades
Indeed.
upon decades upon decades.
You know,
I write
Lisha,
that on. Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Ken. Go ahead, Ken.
No, I was going
I'll
to
go
say
after.
that I wrote that the PNM's General Election Manifesto of 2015 on page 22, they spoke explicitly of setting up a border protection agency. And indeed, they set up a committee when they got into government in 2015, made up of the key stakeholders, head of the Coast Guards and so on, and other agencies, SSA and so on. But they never implemented the recommendation. And you have to ask why. A
Why?
country that is so vulnerable to illegal trafficking and money laundering and all these other weapons trade and so on, made no effort. And at a time where the murder rate was just so high, 630 or 640 murders last year, So you're right, the murder rate has gone down dramatically, and it has a lot to do with, one, the state of emergency, which took a lot of the criminals out of the streets, and it also had to do with the American crackdown on drug trafficking. Now, these left-wing David Abdullahs and so on, with this imperialism talk and all that, but at the end of the day, Trinidadians and Tobagonians are safer than they were. 300 fewer people died than last year, and that pertains to quality of life, to life itself.
Correct.
And those are benefits that the country has seen as a result of these initiatives against crime.
Okay, now I'm just doing a quick time check, 8:53. So guys, if there's anyone who would like to, well, ask any questions on it to Mr. Ali or make any comments themselves, please feel free. I know it's still early in the year and people are now, settling down after that hectic period of partying. Some people are still partying. Carnival has started, but this is an important topic. And, if you all have any questions or comments you would like to address to Mr. Ali, please feel free. We have a few minutes left again. I am not really seeing anything. I'm seeing a couple comments there. The borders are wide open and too much drugs and guns are getting through too easy. The Coast Guards were just not able to do the job, right? Now the thing is, our resources, they would have, our Coast Guards, our military and so on, they would have needed resources in order to do that job. So the question is, why weren't resources being provided, right? So that was one
But
of the
Lisa,
concerns.
Lisha,
Yeah.
what I was going to say a couple minutes ago is that we are asking these questions, and I'll ask rhetorically, how do you try to reason with a clear lack of political will to get something done? Just like in the other sectors and the other issues that the country had over the 9.5 years, we saw a lack of political will. And the reason why I'll say that is that we have the empirical evidence to show that, okay, let's look at the radar in Tobago. A couple of weeks after that radar was installed, we had two of the largest historical drug busts in the country, with each being well over $100 billion in drugs. So, we have the answers near to us, at least in my opinion. We have the answers near to us. We don't need the big fancy committees and those kinds of things. We sometimes just need to align ourselves properly. Because one radar, in which we can get our radar correct in 10 years, and one radar, and we have two of the largest drug busts in the country coming in just a couple of weeks after that. I think that is the empirical evidence to show that there was just a pure and absolute lack of political will to get these things done. And the question still remains, why? The evidence is there now.
Absolutely. And our grandparents used to say, what's in the dark must come to light.
Can I have
Exactly.
It's
I
all coming
have
to light.
one more question for you, right? Now,
Mhm.
those who are pushing that there is some sort of crisis, or we should be concerned about a crisis developing in Trinidad and Tobago because of what is happening in Venezuela, right? What are your comments on that?
No, well, as you said at the start, there is no crisis in Trinidad. Well, we are human beings, and people would have concern because we are so close to Venezuela. There has been no indication, there's been no indication, one, and no actual developments that would lead one to be scared. Now, people who are abroad, so there's talk that people are afraid to return for carnival and so on. There are elements in the society, many of them on social media, who are spreading hysteria. And I guess that happens in every society. But if you follow the facts, you would know that nothing that has happened in Venezuela has impacted us in terms of security in a negative way. Like I keep saying, the maritime busts in the Caribbean Sea has impacted us in a positive way. Those who are for law and order. It has helped us because we've dealt in a major way with drug trafficking, which is a huge problem in the society with the massive underground economy. And like I keep saying, the traditional media are not talking about it. And why? Why? And the Prime Minister has spoken. I didn't mention this earlier, but at the start, she spoke about the fake elites. And lately, she spoke about narco politicians. Now, the Prime Minister would know where she gets intel information from, but we could speculate. I don't want to speculate on a public broadcast, but the Prime Minister would know where she is getting that from. She's informed. She is informed by the relevant local and international agencies, and that is as much as we could say. There are things she would know that nobody else would know. A Prime Minister knows things that nobody else knows.
Correct.
And she would have received that information, and maybe I should just leave that sentence there. But it's for people to ask why she would have said that, and what is the basis for that, and they could come to their own answer and their own conclusion based on that. So all of those are indicators really of where we are and the information the Prime Minister has at her disposal. There has been nothing here to suggest that we are in a precarious position, that our security is at risk. What the Americans in Venezuela was targeted, and we must give them, whether we give them credit or not, but we must acknowledge that they went in there were no casualties. They focused on their targets for weeks and possibly months. They said they knew everything about Maduro they needed to know. Everything. This is the Americans. This is a takeout like how they took out Osama bin Laden. And the Americans have gotten better than over the years. There were times in the past when they went to try to take out people and so on, and there were casualties and so on. There were no casualties here. They went in very targeted. They were so up to speed on everything. They managed to take off the lights in Caracas too. They also took off the lights. They had that technology. They took off the lights and they went in and did all that they had to do. And they got back out. So they were targeted. No indications of risk to Trinidad. And I see, as we're ending the broadcast, I see that Trinidad will benefit, certainly in terms of security, and we could anticipate that the drug running and the trade in illegal weapons and so on, and the prostitution that is linked to the importation of some Venezuelan migrants, all of those would start to be reduced. We could anticipate that. So when stability returns to the homeland, some Venice will go back. How many, we don't know. But clearly some people, a lot of people make it out that the only Venezuelans here are those struggling and catching hell and things. But there are some professionals here who also fled it.
True.
I'm told we have doctors and lawyers and so on here, they can't perform as doctors and lawyers, but so they would like to go back and set up the practice and reconcile with the families and meet their friends and so on again. So we could anticipate some would go back. That would help us in terms of all kinds of things: healthcare, education, housing, all of those things. I see a better day for all around, and we look forward to that. And I could anticipate. I think in the hours ahead, I mean the days ahead of us, we will begin to see indicators of what will happen in the energy sector. I think that will be an early indicator, and I feel I may be going out on a limb here, but I feel that we will get some sign of the OFAC license, so that we could begin this discussion with the Venezuelan authorities on that cross-border field, the Law and Manatee, which of course will be a great day for all of us here.
So guys, this certainly will be an interesting year, but before we leave, I see there is a question here on YouTube. It's a comment rather, asking you to comment on it. People are concerned about the economy no longer being propped up by the second economy, more so for the smaller CARICOM countries. Any views on this?
By the underground economy, just one part of the sentence I didn't catch well.
People are concerned about the economy no longer being propped up by the second economy,
Yeah.
more so for the smaller CARICOM countries.
And that's a significant point, that's a most significant point, because while I keep talking about the negative aspect of the underground economy, there are, I don't want to call it positive sides, but you know, they create some employment. And there, in some areas, I have to say this very guardedly, some consumables are cheaper because we know why, and they're tied into underworld trade and so on and so forth. So, yes, I mean, but for any country interested in law and order, and this country is not only interested, we depend on law and order because we're so vulnerable as a little island in the Caribbean Sea. We must want to get out and as much as from the underground economy. But I understand what the commentator is saying, and he or she is absolutely correct, because underground economies, I want to say that I was going to say they play a role in society, but it's not a positive role. But we also acknowledge some of what they create, jobs and so on. But for the greater good of the society, they're not what a society, or especially one like ours, that is so close to drug production. When you look at the production of coca leaves in Colombia to cross the border into Venezuela, some come up the Orinoco, and they come into Trinidad and Tobago so easily, and they have caused some elites to get rich, but they've cost the lives of many people. They've cost a lot of these guns. Trinidad and Tobago does not manufacture guns. No guns are manufactured in the Caribbean. There's not a Caribbean country that makes guns, and we have guns here that are more sophisticated than the police and army guns. And so all of those things have hurt our people. So while I understand, and that commentator is making a valid comment, for the sake of stability in our country, we must support this government and what it is doing. And I think on the summary of all that is ahead of us, are better days ahead, I think.
So I would say that the benefits are not outweighed by the negatives, I should say, far outweigh the benefits of that underground economy.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some people have enjoyed the spoils of what money laundering and these ills could get them, but some people have lost their lives.
Guys, stick to the basics. You can't get the right result by doing the wrong thing, eh? So
Right,
stick
right.
to the basics, right? I mean,
Mhm.
come on. Yes, I understand as well what the viewer is saying here, but that's not the way we want to go down in Trinidad.
Yeah, well, the person was,
That kind of thinking. Now, the viewer is not endorsing the thinking, eh? He's
no,
just saying
the
that,
person isn't endorsing.
right?
He's just
He
asking a
is just
question.
saying that what could be part of the concern for people is that the economy, the legitimate economy, is no longer being propped up by what he's calling the second economy, which is the
Yeah.
underground, illegitimate economy,
Yeah,
right?
you know, you look at, for example, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There were 94 murders there last year. Long time, when I say long time, that was a few years ago. If there were 5 or 10 murders there, because those are a leisure paradise. Nobody killing anybody, everybody working in the hospitality industry. They're working in a bar or a restaurant or producing food and those kind of stuff, agriculture and so on. No, 94. And that, all of that is tied in to the illegal trade. A lot of these islands, the economy and key people have been involved in the trade and so on. So that has caused major bloodletting, major casualties, and that, of course, can't be acceptable. So, guys, that's it for us.
Yes, it's 9:07, so I think we could call it a wrap. I'm seeing some comments from Carrie talking about the government need to invest in the ship repair yard. It pays US dollars 100%, but that's something for another program, Carrie. So on that note, well, we are going to close off the program. Donnie, before I go to Ken for any final remarks, you have any you want to
There
add?
is one thing I would like to say is a benefit for this whole thing now, and it's something we normally discount, and it's peace of mind. Peace of mind in the regard of, you would remember quite some months ago, there was this huge thing with Venezuela and Guyana with regards to a border dispute. And that started simply when Maduro started to say, part of their land is ours. It was a simple comment, and that escalated to where I believe the ICC got involved, and we had regional players and everybody. I believe it's St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they had some signing of a declaration. Notice that same discussion started before all this drama with Trinidad. And he was saying Trinidad was generally a part of Venezuela. So in my opinion, it would have taken very little from him to push that narrative and push that sort of drama and pressure onto Trinidad. And I believe that it would have eventually occurred. And I think for something like that to happen here, it would have incised our population. It would have get everybody, as they put it, antsy, you know. And when I look at it from a peace of mind perspective, I think that is one of the very notable benefits. I think this year is going to be very telling, and it has the potential for many shifts, positive shifts to occur in energy, in immigration, in agriculture. You could imagine this region becoming food secure, because now we're going to have the extension from Brazil and Argentina, who are very food secure, Guyana, who is very food secure now, coming up, hopefully coming up to Venezuela and into the Caribbean region through Trinidad. That is something that could happen. Obviously, to do that, we will need to look at, trade agreements and stuff like that, because if we have goods coming in and we still have to pay duties, it may put us back to square one. But that's another discussion. But I think this year will be very telling, and it will pave the way for many things to be seen in the region and with Trinidad as it relates to Venezuela. And it's something that we will be keenly following. So thank you, Ken, and thank you for listeners. This was the 4th season. And as we said, I just remembered something, Nisha. We have to send out condolences to Indira Sajiwan. She lost her mom a couple of days ago.
Oh, my.
Yeah, while she was vacationing in Florida. She lost her mom a couple of days ago, so our condolences goes out to Central Bank Director, someone who is usually, very willing to come on our program anytime we ask, for her specialist reviews. So our prayers and our thoughts are with you and your family at this point in time.
I share your thoughts there, and I certainly agree. Well, my final thoughts, Alicia and Donnie. First, thank you all very much for having me. I get a lot of responses. You have a very popular show. I congratulate you on it. You have very healthy discourses. I tune in to your shows. I wish you the very best. I also say, as you both have said throughout the program, There are a lot of events taking place and many more that will take place. This could be a very dramatic year in our experience. So congratulations on the very good work you're doing. You just touched on the Guyana situation. It was, Vincent, they signed what was called the Argyle Agreement, which Maduro
Yes,
went
yes, yes.
promptly
That's it.
and
Yes.
he broke that. He broke it like
Yes. Yeah,
nobody's
yeah, you
business.
broke it. Correct.
Yeah, and we didn't even say this, but Maduro was illegal in office. He stole the election. He stole the election, and all these CARICOM leaders who are gnashing teeth over the thing said nothing about that. He stole the election.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I know we've covered a lot. I thank you both for having me, and it's nice exchanging with you. And I guess we'll link up again sometime soon.
Definitely. Nice having you.
In
Yes, thank you so
closing,
much.
well, I also want to join in expressing condolences to Dr. Sajuan. I actually did not know Donnie until you mentioned it, so thanks for letting us
Yeah.
know. Ken, thank you so much for coming on the program, and we really, really look forward to having you on the program. I
Thank
do
you.
hope that when you come on, we get a lot of views, so that's good. You build some traction for us on this platform. So
Thank
thanks
you.
for
It's
that,
my
right?
pleasure.
And
Thank you for
also,
having me.
your handling of these sort of topics, which can be, as you said, very controversial, and
Yeah.
thank you for your excellent research and handling these controversial topics for us. I want to thank everybody who joined us here tonight on Zoom, on Facebook, on YouTube. Yes, I know, people are slowly coming out of the Christmas and New Year's season, people still partying and whatnot, but we really wanted to kick off our program and start off season 4 because this is going to be an exciting year. We have a lot to look forward to, and we're going to have a lot of things to discuss. If there are any particular topics that you guys want us to look into, just drop us a line. Send us a message on the Keep It Real Politics page or my personal page or Donnie's personal page, and we will be happy to entertain those topics. So on that note, I just want to say thank you again. Good night to all of you, and please join us on next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. for another episode of One on One. Thank you, and good night.
Good
Have a
night.
good night.